Hello everyone, it's James here again. I hope you're doing really well. Today I want to talk about Zilla Cabs. But before we do, if you like the video, hit the like. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe and sign up to the mailing list and I will send you free stuff. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Zilla Cabs by now, this plugin is absolutely fantastic. It's a selection of impulse responses, all taken from Zilla Cabs, of course, by the wonderful Nolly, who is, of course, in charge of Get Good Drums. Now, do we need another plugin which houses yet more impulse responses for guitars? We've already got so many. We've literally got them coming out of our ears. There's just too many to choose from. Do we need this? I think we absolutely do, because it's not just about the sound. It's about the workflow. It's about how the plugin is set up so you can be creative. I don't know about you, but when I start diving into different IRs and trying to get the right sound that I'm looking for, I often just end up disappearing down a rabbit hole. And before you know it, I've just lost hours, days, whatever, just trying to find that perfect tone. And it can be such a nightmare just trawling through menus and menus of different and all wonderful IRs before you get to a point where you have to stop and you realize actually the one I had at the beginning was probably the best. Now, what this plugin does is it brings everything together. It makes it really easy to just switch between different cabs, different mics, and adjust them as you're going. The main thing here is it's fast, intuitive, and creative. If you don't know much about impulse responses, then go and check out my video that I created, which is talking about them and how, why, and where to use them, and also about how to select different ones. So I'll put a little link up here, but I'll also put a link at the end of the video. But for now, I think maybe we should go and actually check out the plugin. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can use this. You can use this with your favorite amp sim, or you can use it with an actual amplifier if you need to. So for example, if you're using a device that can capture the amp sound like 2 Notes Torpedo, then you can use it with that. So you're using it in place of the cab part of your guitar sound. So just very quickly, for example, if you're using an amp sim like this one, this is STL Tones Amp Hub. All you need to do is go into the cab section. This will be the same on all amp sims. It's exactly the same process. Just go onto the cab section and make sure that you've turned that off. So in this case, we'd be going to disconnected and just make sure that they are both disconnected, so you're not getting anything from those cabs at all. Just so you know that it's definitely done that. Let's just have a listen to what it sounds like without the cab attached. Mind your ears, this is horrible. All that said, it's a similar sound you'd kind of get from chucking it into a mixing desk, and a similar sound you might get from some guitars in the 70s and 60s, really, wouldn't you? But anyway, right, that is successfully done. Now, the other option, as mentioned before, you could be using it with your actual amplifier. So if you're using something like 2 Notes Capture, which is what I did, then all you need to do is just insert that onto the channel and you're good to go. So just to clarify, I'm going to take this one off. This was the actual sound of the amp without a cab. There you go. Pretty horrible. You get the idea. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the version that I took from my amp, just because that happens to be the one that I went with in the end anyway. So let's load it up. Now, when you load it up, you get faced with this screen. Fairly straightforward. As you can see, you've got all the options on here to pull in a cab, and then below that you'll get the various different options for speakers and microphones. If you need to, depending on how loud the incoming signal was, you do have an input and output that you can adjust. So I would just make sure that you're getting a decent level and of course not clipping as well. Now, I was actually getting a pretty decent level when I recorded. Yeah, set it at pretty nominal level, not too upsetting, but just enough to do the job. So if we start, I'll show you what you get given, or just a rough overview of what you get given. So first you'll be selecting a cab and you've got all of these to choose from. So you've got a few 2x12s, a couple of 1x12s, and then also a bunch of 4x12s as well. They all sound a little bit different, so it's definitely worth just cycling through those just to get an idea of how their characteristics change. Okay, so let's go with an angled 4x12. Then you work down to the next part, which is select a speaker. Each cab generally has 2 speakers to choose from. So let's go with with a vintage 30 because everyone likes a vintage 30. And then the next part is the mic section. And you've got all the favorites that you'll generally see when someone is capturing IRs. You've got a couple of condensers, large diaphragm and small diaphragm. You've got a ribbon mic. You've got the old faithful SM57, possibly or definitely the most used mic when recording guitar cabs. You got the off-axis version, a Sennheiser MD421, another favorite, of course, and then another ribbon mic, but this time it's a room version. Now, we'll get to that in a little bit. So let's just start with the SM57. Right at the bottom here, just lastly, you've got an adjustment so you can adjust the actual distance from the cab where the mic will be situated. Generally, I'll start on close, but of course, just have a play around and see. So let's just have a very quick listen to what the first one sounds like. This is SM57 4x12 cab. Okay, sounds great. Now, the other setting you'll see on here, aside from mute, solo, and phase, is a pan knob. Now, that's only really relevant if you're running it in stereo mode. So if you're going to have two different cabs, like one on either side or something like that. I'm running it in mono, so that option is grayed out in this section. Now, let's just have a quick listen to what it sounds like when you adjust the distance. Okay, so that's the first point where you can start tone shaping. I tend to leave it on close and then go from there, but of course, play around and see what's working for your song. Now, next up, this is a point where you can just start adding cabs, and this is when it starts to get interesting, and this is where the point about it being very fast, intuitive, and creative comes in. So let's, for example, take the same cab, same speaker, but we're just going to add in a ribbon. A common combination, everyone likes it, and instantly we can start now listening to each one and see what characteristics they hold and also what we like from them. So let's solo the ribbon and then just go between the two and just see what they sound like. So obviously, as expected, the ribbon is that much darker. But now, of course, we've got the wonderful volume control there. We can just bring in as much or as little as we like, and we can just adjust that balance and get it sounding how we want it to sound. So let's just bring in that ribbon, just see what it sounds like for now. So you can see already how quickly I've managed to get closer to a sound I like. I've managed to beef up that already nice sounding SM57. I've managed to beef it up and instantly just make it sound better. Well, better if that's what you're going for anyway. Now, it's also important to mention that all of these mics are all in phase, so you can adjust the volume between all of them and you don't need to worry too much about the phase relationship. You don't have to worry about your guitars disappearing in the mix because they've all been tracked beautifully and they're all gonna work. But you do have the phase button there in case you just want to find that spot where they just really, really hit. So for example, let's turn that on and we'll just find where it gets the thinnest. And then take the phase off. Of course, sounds great where it was. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit though because I liked it about there. And now it's really easy to just start mixing things up. Like I'm kind of liking that sound, but let's throw something else into the mix. Let's chuck in this Super Fat Boy 2x12. We're going to go with a vintage 30 again, and we're going to take this small diaphragm. See what that sounds like on its own. Pretty nice sound already. Let's bring it into the mix. Sounds wonderful. Now, this is a point where you might want to be starting to pay attention to the output knob, because as you start to add more mics, it is going to get a little bit louder. So if you need to bring that down, you can do that at this point. Now, the other one I want to show you, because it's actually just a very cool sound in its own right, is what I mentioned earlier about the room microphone. So let's pull up a cab. Let's get the same as what we had before. It's 4x12 angled with a vintage 30, and then we're going to go down to this ribbon room. Let's have a listen to that on its own. It's a good sounding room. Now, straight away, that has a feeling that it could be a really cool effect. You could definitely find a place in a song where that would work. But also, if you just bring this one just ever so slightly in with the other mics that you've got, you can really start to give your guitar a little bit of ambience, a little bit of vibe, just kind of sitting around it. And then, you know, also making it sound a little bit more natural. So let's just bring that in and see what it sounds like. So already you've got a really nice flavor that you can throw in there whenever you need it. Or maybe you just want to use that just to finish off the sound. And this right here, now I've got 4 different mics here. This is when it starts to get really interesting, because I've got a sound that I'm liking, but have I started to go just a little bit too far? Maybe, maybe not. It's so easy to now flick between the different options and just see exactly what I'm looking for the track. So let's just have a quick play around and I'll try and show you what I mean. Nice. I like that. Just for shits and giggles, let's have a little listen to it in the track. This is actually an unmixed version of the track, but doesn't really matter. Let's just give you a bit of an idea. And of course, you've got a whole bunch of presets in here which sound great, and it's totally worth a look, especially if you're not really sure what kind of combinations to choose. They can give you a little bit of a guide of what works. So let's just go with fat and warm. Let's try that. And a couple more. Straight away, you've got some wonderful combinations that just work. So that can be a really great way to start to see which mics go well together, all of your famous setups, and then you can start to tweak it a little bit from there. Now, the only thing that you might say that this plugin lacks is the ability to move the microphones. You know, when you move it towards the center of the cone as opposed to the edge, you get a very different tone. That's the only thing that you can't actually change on here, but it doesn't really matter because you've got so many different cabs and you've got loads of different options on there. It's like they've covered all of those tones for you. So if you're looking for something brighter, one option of course is to just bring the microphone into the middle of the cone, but you can just pull up a different cab, a brighter cab, and you'll get that tone. It's all there. It's awesome. And there you go. So the point of that plugin is not just the fact that the cabs sound great. Of course, yes, they sound great. The main thing is its functionality and just how easy, simple, and fast it is to get a fantastic sound. That can always be the case when you're flicking through different IRs, and it can be quite uninspiring as well when you're scrolling through lists which are just codes which don't mean much at first, and they can just be quite uninspiring. This helps you to quickly visualize what you're looking for. It's very easy to swap mics and cabs out. It's very easy to just adjust the volume relationship between the 2, 3, 4, or up to 8 different tracks that you've got on there. So it means that you can stay creative. You can actually just carry on with your song. Imagine that. Imagine just being able to just keep going and just making your tune. Yeah, sounds crazy, doesn't it? But anyway, so if you haven't tried it already, I highly recommend you go and check it out. And if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Or perhaps they're at guitar, what are your favorites? Maybe chuck a few of your favorites down below and we can start having a chat about those too. Although it's very likely that we might disappear down that rabbit hole there too. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for coming. I had a lovely time. Bye for now.